Hello everybody, this is Dumpster Cat. Welcome back to another Pioneer video. This one we're going to be going over Seasons Past, so very special video, in my opinion at least, as I love Seasons Past so much. I've been doing some secret brewing off camera with this deck to some pretty good success. I'm going to be showing you guys just a single match, just to kind of give you an outline of the deck, but in this video I just wanted to give some information about the deck, how the deck works, how it functions, and kind of my theory about its position in the meta, if it has success at all. And just very quickly to touch on the theory behind this deck, I feel like if Mastery becomes something attractive, or something even more attractive than it once was in the Pioneer format as it stands now that we see certain decks having a lot of prominence for an extended period of time, such as Lotus Field, Mono Green Devotion, although a bit newer, is definitely obviously very powerful in the format. And then other decks like Rakdos Midrange probably going to be seeing a lot of play in the future and just going to be a staple of the format. Mastery is going to be very attractive to come by, and I feel like that Seasons Past, both as deck and just as an archetype in general, falling under the BGX midrange, or I guess BGX kind of control midrange shell, it's going to be very attractive, and I feel like this deck is actually the most conducive to Mastery, or at least one of the most conducive to Mastery in the format, and as a result, if you achieve Mastery with this deck, I feel like you'll have very nice success with it, and then you'll have very nice success in the future with it. And so I'm going to outline why. And so the answer to that question kind of comes in two waves. First, this deck has a very linear play pattern, just at first glance. So obviously, just like any other BGX midrange deck, we're going to be disrupting opponent with early discard spells, early interaction in the form of pushes, decays, pretty neat inclusive March of Wretched Sorrow here. Of course, the trophies, and then going to be in the mid to late game, we're going to be trying to overrun our opponent with just value, mainly in the form of Dark Petition plus Season Past. Dark Petition, probably about 80% of the time, going to be finding Seasons Past, and then thereafter you play probably, or I guess hopefully play a card after that with the Spell Mastery mana. And then you're just going to loop the cycle, and so it's going to be very hard for your opponents to get back from that, both in terms of the value, just the sheer card advantage that you get off of Seasons Past, and then the interaction that you get to establish thereafter. And then lastly, along the way, we do have some forms of ramp / value in the form of, I would say, these 5 cards, to a lesser extent Cultivate. I've been kind of down upon Cultivate as of late. I guess it is worth mentioning that Cultivate is really nice. If you say like you go like turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 3 Cultivate, you could get a turn 4 Dark Petition with Spell Mastery, which is quite impactful and it's quite powerful. So that's worth mentioning. But most of the time, we would rather just go with a Nissa or a Courser of Kruphix, or obviously a Tireless Tracker later on. Nissa has really impressed me. This in the early game, just a clean 2-for-1, so great against mid-range, pretty fair against aggro as just a blocker. You could trade with other creatures sometimes. And then in the late game, it's actually quite a bit of a bomb. It can take over games quite quickly, immediately -2, getting that 4/4, and then just generating value thereafter with her +1 is actually quite impactful, and I've had a lot of success with her lately. And just the ramp element, especially in a deck that's really color intensive and really mana intensive as this one. You see we're playing 25 lands. Like, this deck really needs mana. Nissa just shines very nicely. And so, her combined with these other 4 cards, you really have a nice kind of evolution of the curve here, where you're obviously trying to establish stability in the early and mid game, and then with these kind of 3 drops, you're kind of wanting to extend the game, and then obviously set up your Dark Petition plus Seasons Past to establish your late game inevitability. Then very quickly, in terms of the mana base, which I just touched upon, The notable inclusions mainly come in the form of Field of Ruin. Field of Ruin, I think, is just such an underrated card in the format right now. Obviously, it's pretty hard to fit in the just classic BGX mid-range, where you're very, very color intensive in the early game, as compared to this deck where it's very color intensive, most especially in the late game, I should say. Field of Ruin just fits perfectly in this archetype, I would say. It's great in the format, just in the form of disrupting any sort of mana lands your opponent has, or just disrupting your opponent's mana base, as a lot of decks in Pioneer right now are 3+ colors, or even if they're true colors, they don't play very many basics. And so Field of Ruin is really, really nice. Also, just getting Revolt on Fatal Push in a deck where you're not playing very many creatures you're able to trade with is very, very impactful, and it comes up a lot of the time. So that's just Field of Ruin, just really, really nice. Other than that, we're getting to play Woodland Cemetery, which is really, really fun in my opinion. Very, very impactful. Obviously, with cards like Nissa and Cultivate, Woodland Cemetery is just a nice include. Hissing Quagmire is one that comes up quite often as very, very impactful in the late game, most especially, where it's just a nice blocker, a nice defensive creature where you're able to trade with big creatures or even small creatures your opponent may have. And then obviously in the late game could just serve as a win con, as it's just a fairly nice attacker that you could pair alongside Hive, your other man land of choice, or one of your creatures, or even just your Professor Onyx popping off with the Magecraft in the late game. And then finally, we do have the sideboard. You may have noticed that I had 14 cards in the sideboard previously. I just recently added in the Sorghide Lantern. I don't know why that was out, but yeah, we are playing the Lantern in the 15. Very quickly, Noxious Grasp. Great in the format right now. Surprisingly hits a lot. I bring this in, obviously, against any aggro deck, any green-white deck, or just even blue-white control very often, which is pretty interesting as they play cards like the Wandering Emperor, Teferi, which you want to be hitting very frequently. Go Blank, I've been very, very high on this card recently, even in just classic BGX mid-range. Very, very nice against Phoenix. Actually, really, really nice against Rakdos. That's just a straight-up 2-for-1. That many other cards that are conducive to 2-for-1s that you may think, like a Tireless Tracker or Courser of Kruphix, often just don't get there in the end. Whereas Go Blank is just a straight-up 2-for-1 that has synergies with other decks like Greasefang and Phoenix, even bringing this again in against Lotus Field as well. So really nice like that. Graveyard Trespasser is another one that's really nice. Obviously, great in the format, just in general. We're playing one in the main. Great against aggro, great against any control deck or mid-range deck where we want to establish more of an early game presence. Trespasser just plays that role perfectly. Lost Legacy or slash Necromancer, of course. Great against combo, of course. Witch's Vengeance, just kind of a catch-all removal spell against the spirits or humans matchup. Extinction Event. So this is one that I really want to talk about. Extinction Event is great, obviously, against aggro. You can see we're playing 2 in the main and 2 in the side. However, it is most important against mono green. Mono green is a pretty tough matchup for us. If we do get to the late game where we're looping Seasons Past with Dark Petition, we could probably get there. However, we really do need the help, and so the full 4 Extinction Events I do think are pretty necessary, and we're pretty much the only deck in the format besides Rakdos who gets to play 4 Extinction Events in the 75, which I think is pretty neat, and we get to leverage them even more with the presence of Dark Petition, so that's very nice. The rest are pretty straightforward. Cletus, Tracker, Stamping Sphere, the one of the Lantern I just added in, and then Graphic Cage, maybe a little weird, but I actually really like it against Phoenix and against Greasebane. And so finally, the thing I love most about this deck is it's very flexible to the meta. You see with the presence of Dark Petition, of course, we could really kind of create our deck and curate our deck to the meta as we see fit. We could add more Goblinks to the main deck, add more Trespassers. We could cut our early removal if we need more discard spells. So just things like that play well just in any mid-range deck, but also very, very nicely alongside Dark Petition and Seasons Past. We're able to gain a lot of value from that. Other than that, I'm going to be showing you guys a single match just to provide some context as to or / proof as to why this deck can see some success. Other than that, hope you enjoyed the video, hope you enjoyed the match, and please consider subscribing. Helps me out a lot. Thank you. Okay, and so here we are for the match. I'm just going to be letting this play out as I provide some commentary for it, because the match did go to, pretty sure it ended up with the opponent having 32 seconds on the clock, with us having like 2 minutes. And so it was a very, very lengthy game up against a archetype in a deck that one would think an archetype like us has absolutely no game against. Even with BGX mid-range, the classic mid-range has very, very little game against Niv Mizzet. And so obviously we see right here, the opponent has game 1, turn 4, Niv Mizzet getting a Keranos, and actually just singular card in the form of Keranos. Quite impactful. You'll see that in this game 1, Keranos takes very, very good advantage of us, as we're really not able to interact with that card, and we see the opponent kind of slow rolling it, perhaps being a bit cautious about playing it out, perhaps if they think we have a removal spell for it, but I believe here they go for it. Yep, there's the Keranos. And so we're really unable to deal with this card. March of Wretched Sorrow here, taking care of the Chigantha, very nice. I've been really liking March. Kind of seems like a card that's very not too much impactful, not too impactful, just in the broader scheme of things. However, in a deck that gets a lot of mana early on, as we can see with this the presence of the Courser and just how our deck is so curated against going to the late game, March of Wretched Sorrow can go 5x equals 5+, and so it's pretty impactful against a lot of creatures, and don't forget it hits planeswalkers as well. And of course the life gain is really, really nice. Opponent here is popping off with a lot of Brings Lights. As we see, they're getting a lot of card advantage. This Selfless Glyph Weaver / Deadly Vanity is going to take care of us right here. And our removal is just not really landing up against them, which is pretty poor. But yeah, basically just in terms of the how I feel like this deck is positioned in the meta. Obviously we did, may not be obvious, but we did win against this Niv Mizzet archetype, which I was really, really happy about. Although it did go almost to time, we did get there in the end with no sort of winning by the chess clock, so that was really nice to see. And it was just really nice to see that a deck like Niv Mizzet we're able to kind of beat and have game against. So that was game 1. They won, obviously. We just conceded there. They have so much value. They just brought back Niv Mizzet with their Kolaghan's command. The Keranos was really, really popping off against us. Just impossible for us to interact with, besides discarding it with Aussies or Go Blank. And so, yeah, we lost there. However, in game 2, we have a bit more of a game. We sided out a lot of our early removal. So all of the Fatal Pushes came out, and the 2 Abrupt Decays came out as well. Brought in all of the value we could find, so Tireless Tracker, the Lost Legacy was brought in. Even one of the Noxious Grasps was brought in as well. Just as a catch-all removal spell against Niv Mizzet. So here we get to do a really, really interesting thing. I'll actually pause this for a moment. As a 5-color deck, Field of Ruin and alongside Assassin's Trophy are going to be very, very nice if we're able to target them, target their lands in the early game. And so, as I outlined in the deck tech, classic PGX midrange isn't really able to leverage Field of Ruin. However, here in Seasons Past, we're able to really, really leverage it, and to some nice success, as we were seeing against this 5-color deck. And I feel like with the presence of both types of fires of mentioned decks in the form of Karuga fires and Enigmatic Incarnation proving to be more prominent nowadays, having access to Field of Ruin and Trophy just solely on their mana base is actually quite impactful, I do believe. So there we saw we actually lost Legacy to their Niv Mizzet, which, excuse me, as we see, it'll come up later on how impactful Niv Mizzet really is, just both in the early game and the late game. Here they're going to do a Bring to Light. Fortunately, they don't have access to Niv Mizzet, so they get a Keranos, which may seem a bit more difficult for us to deal with. Here we just play out a Kalidas, which doesn't seem to be the best. They actually ramp us here with this Dire Strait Rampage, getting rid of our Hive, which we're perfectly fine with. However, here the Kalidas, the lifelink on the Kalidas is quite impactful against the Keranos. We're able to get some value off the tracker. Unfortunately, only one basic left in the deck with this Cultivate, so we only get to achieve one clue token. But, fine, we have Dark Petition in hand. They have Nahiri, which is a bit problematic. However, here we're just able to Dark Petition for the Seasons Past, and then with the mana we get off of it, we just killed that Nahiri with the March, keeping in mind it does hit Planeswalkers as well, so that's very nice. Here, what do they do? We know they have Valky in hand, which I guess they play out here. They get Bring to Light and Assassin's Trophy, which are probably like the two worst cards for us that they could get, the most impactful cards for them. So that kind of sucks, but we do get just a Swift to end it here, which is nice, and then play out the Murderous Rider with our two bombs in hand in the form of Seasons Past and Professor Onyx. So they just have yet another Bring to Light for Omnath, which is not too bad because we do have the Grasp for it, which we play in response to the ATB trigger, so they don't get the Lannis trigger thereafter. And then here, pretty sure we get to set up a nice Seasons Pass. So obviously getting a ton of value here, really putting some pressure against our opponent. And then we go for the Go Blank. One thing that's actually pretty important when having the choice between playing Professor Onyx or Seasons Pass, when you have the mana to go for it, always go for the Seasons Pass. Just because if you play Professor first, actually, now that I'm thinking of it, perhaps it was actually correct to go for the Onyx first. I guess this is a bad example, but if you're playing against a deck that is high in removal, specifically targeted removal against Planeswalkers, or a deck that has a large amount of counterspells, always go for the Onyx first because you're able to just get the Seasons Past, get her with the Seasons Past thereafter. However, against this deck, I think I just wanted to get the value down, especially with this Lost Legacy, which actually opt not to play it right here, which is pretty interesting. You would think that the Lost Legacies get better as the game goes on, as you're able to just interact with your opponent and kind of deconstruct their deck, which is true for a lot of decks, such as like Lotus Field or any other sort of like off-meta combo deck, where like you're able to stabilize at least a little bit by getting their main combo piece, but very often they have a secondary combo piece which you want to get with that second Lost Legacy. Here we're just generating a lot of value, as you can see. However, in this specifically against Niv Mizzet, getting the Niv is very important, obviously early on. However, because they're a Bring to Light deck, we could name Bring to Light, but after seeing the contents of their deck, like here they just get a Colorbounce command, and like that's not even like very impactful for them. And so that's where I was thinking, like, okay, Lost Legacy is probably not too relevant to play early on, at least, after the first copy. And so just kind of opted to not go for it, which is pretty interesting. Here, I believe I'm just holding up Trophy mana. Yeah, and they had the Vanishing Verse, which they played out here. So, another thing that's pretty interesting is this deck takes a long time to kill your opponent, and so the chess clock is pretty important just to keep in mind. However, with the inclusion of Trespasser, the main lands, and then the Courser, which I just put in, we do have some extra game against decks like this. And even here, that goes to the late game, and then even here we are just actually killing our own Murderous Rider with this March, just to gain some extra life, just so we have some more late game inevitability. You may have noticed that we're not even activating our fields because we know we don't have any more basics in the deck, which is kind of sad. But against other decks that go late into the game, just like us, it's pretty difficult to amass that large pool of basic lands. And here we even see Leyland Binding, which is pretty. I always love seeing Binding in Pioneer. Obviously sees a lot of play in Modern, but not so much in Pioneer. And of course we do have the trophies to interact with this, so it's not too bad. So they get their 8th card in the form of Giganta out there, which is fine, as we just have a trophy for it, and then we have a trophy for the Binding. And then, of course, just the 1 Season's Pass in hand is just so nice. Especially, this deck kind of struggles against Control, or just any deck with that counter spells, because Season's Past is so blatantly weak against it. But against mid-range, mono green, the broader meta, it's just does so much work, and we see here that the opponent just concedes to it because we're going to be getting. We have a full graveyard, 19 cards, but we're going to be getting let's see, 0. Do we have a 1-drop? We don't even have a 1-drop. Oh, I guess the March is a 1-drop, so 1, 2, probably 3, 4, 5 cards, 6 cards with the Extinction event. So just a lot of value that any other deck is probably not able to achieve. So that's pretty nice. And so here we are for the final game of this match. Just wanted to highlight this match, especially because it is such a pretty bad matchup. Just in the broader terms of the meta, we see here that they have a pretty nice hand. We see Bring to Light, Valky, pretty nice. But they do have a lot of targets for Bring to Light in hand, so that's not the best. Here this may have been too aggressive, but we do trophy their Savai Triumph, which is not the best because they just are able to get the white mana anyways. We got their Caryatid out of hand, by the way, with the Thoughtseize, which is pretty impactful. And here at turn 5, they're still able to go for Niv Mizzet with Bring to Light, so perhaps that trophy should have just been held for the Niv Mizzet creature, but I think that's okay. As here we're just able to kind of run them over with this Graveyard Trespasser, getting some value with the Field of Ruin, and then go blanking them, which is actually kind of impactful here, as the cards in hand are dwindling. Same with us, but unfortunately for us, they do have yet another Bring to Light, which they're just going to go for a Keranos. I was actually worried that they're going to go for a Niv Mizzet, but kind of fortunately for us, they went for the Keranos instead. As you can see, the times are kind of dwindling really quickly, and so a Niv Mizzet would have been pretty bad, just getting a lot of card advantage early on. However, that last turn, we were able to get a lot of presence on the board in the form of the Kalitas and then the Nissa getting the Ashaya token out there. And then here we're able to just kind of establish our dominance with the Professor Onyx. And they're at 3 life with 39 seconds on the clock, 34. They just play out their creature, 1 card in hand, and so we have 2 Quagmires, so they have to have a removal spell to kill us here, or to survive here, as we just do activate both of them and then attack for lethal. And fortunately for us, they didn't have it. And so Very, very nice match. I was really, really happy with this, as Live Miss It and any other game that, or any other deck that just wants to go over top of our game is quite hard to deal with. Even like Rakdos midrange to a certain extent is able to do that. And so we kind of have to establish in some certain circumstances winning earlier on with the presence of Trespasser, as you could see. We obviously brought in the 2 from the sideboard as well. The Trackers, the Kalidas, the Anissa especially was really, really nice here. Turn 9 is actually kind of a early time to kill the opponent with this deck, so I was pretty happy about that. Just getting the win early on there, at least in this game 3, but more broadly with the match in general. And so with that being said, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed just the archetype as a whole and kind of my opinions on it, how it places in the meta, more broadly speaking. Hope you were able to learn something. I've been having some pretty good success with this deck, and so I do plan on doing a league with it in the future. So let me know if you're interested in seeing more things like that. I would definitely be down to do more coverage with Seasons Past, just because nobody else is really doing anything about it. Even like KO Diamonds has not touched it, I don't believe. And so that being said, hope you enjoyed the video, hope you're able to learn something or just be entertained. And yeah, see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it.